is a muscular organ about the size of a fist, located just behind and slightly towards the left of the breastbone. The heart is the first functional organ to develop and starts to beat and pump blood at about 3 weeks into embryogenesis. This early start is crucial for subsequent embryonic and prenatal development. The heart is derived from the splachnopuric mesenchyme in the neural plate, which forms the cardiogenic region. 2 endocardial tubes from this region fuse to form a primitive heart tube known as the tubular heart. Between the 3rd and 4th week, the heart tube lengthens and begins to fold to form an S shape within the pericardium. This places the chambers and major vessels into the correct alignment for the developed heart. Further development includes the septa, valves formation and remodeling of the heart chambers. By the end of the 5th week, the septa are complete and the heart valves are completed by the 9th week. The embryonic heart begins beating at around 22 days after conception. It starts to beat at a rate of about 75 to 80 beats per minute. The embryonic heart rate then accelerates and reaches a peak rate of 165 to 185 bpm early in the early 7th week. After 9 weeks, it starts to decelerate, slowing to around 145 bpm at birth. There is no difference in female and male heart rates before birth. The anatomy of heart. The heart is located in the middle compartment of the mediastinum in the chest at the level of T5-T8 thoracic vertebrae. The back surface of the heart lies near to the vertebral column and the front surface sits deep to the sternum and costal cartilages. The lower tip of the heart, the apex, lies to the left of the sternum from the mid-sternal line between the junction of the 4th and 5th ribs. The right side of the heart is deflected forwards and the left deflected backwards. An adult heart has a mass of 250 to 350 grams. The heart is typically the size of a fist, around 12 cm in length, 8 cm wide and 6 cm in thickness. Well-trained athletes can have much larger hearts due to the effects of exercise on the heart muscle, similar to the response of skeletal muscle. The heart is cone-shaped with its base positioned upwards and tapering down to the apex. In humans, other mammals and birds, the heart is divided into 4 chambers: upper left and right atria, lower left and right ventricles. Commonly, the right atrium and ventricle are referred together as the right heart and their left counterparts as the left heart. The largest part of the heart is usually slightly offset to the left side of the chest and is felt to be on the left because the left heart is stronger since it pumps to all body parts. As the heart lies in between the lungs, the left lung is smaller than the right lung and has a cardiac notch in its border to accommodate the heart. Fish, in contrast, have 2 chambers, an atrium and a ventricle, while reptiles have 3 chambers. In a healthy heart, the blood flows only in one direction through the heart due to the heart valves which prevent backflow of blood. Heart wall. The heart is enclosed in a protective double-membraned sac or wall called the pericardium, which attaches to the mediastinum, providing anchorage for the heart. The heart sits within this cavity called the pericardial cavity, which contains a fluid called the pericardial fluid. Pericardium is a type of serous membrane that produces serous fluid to lubricate the heart and prevent friction between the ever-beating heart and its surrounding organs. Besides lubrication, the pericardium serves to hold the heart in position and maintain a hollow space for the heart to expand into when it is full. The pericardium has two layers, a visceral layer that covers the outside of the heart and a parietal layer that forms a sac around the outside of the pericardial cavity. The outer parietal layer is strong and is composed of tough fibrous tissue. It is supplied by the phrenic nerves. The inner visceral layer is transparent and serous and is innervated by the parasympathetic nerves. The heart wall is made up of three layers: the inner serous membrane called endocardium, middle myocardium, and outer fibrous membrane called epicardium. The endocardium is made up of a lining of simple squamous epithelium and covers heart chambers and valves. It is continuous with the endothelium of the veins and arteries of the heart and is joined to the myocardium with a thin layer of connective tissue. The endocardium secrete endothelins, which play a role in regulating the contraction of the myocardium. The swirling pattern of myocardium helps the heart pump effectively. The middle layer of the heart wall is the myocardium, which is made up of a layer of involuntary striated muscle tissue surrounded by a framework of collagen. The myocardium is also supplied with blood vessels and nerve fibers that help to regulate the heart rate. The cardiac muscle tissue has autorhythmicity, that is, the unique ability to initiate a cardiac action potential at a fixed rate and spreading the impulse rapidly from cell to cell to trigger the contraction of the entire heart. This autorhythmicity is still modulated by the endocrine and nervous systems. Epicardium is the serous membrane covering of the heart containing thick layer of adipose tissues, blood vessels and nerve fibers. The coronary blood vessels travel through this layer and corresponds with visceral pericardium. The cardiac muscle cell or cardiomyocytes have the ability to contract easily. They make up the bulk of cells in the atria and ventricles. Modified cardiomyocytes are the pacemaker cells of the conducting system. These contractile cells are connected by intercalated discs which allow a rapid response to impulses of action potential from the pacemaker cells. The cardiac muscle pattern is elegant and complex as the muscle cells swirl and spiral around the chambers of the heart. They form a figure 8 pattern around the atria and around the bases of the great vessels. Deeper ventricular muscles also form a figure 8 around the two ventricles and proceed towards the apex. This complex swirling pattern allows the heart to pump blood more effectively than a simple linear pattern would. Chambers. The heart has 4 chambers, 2 upper atria, the receiving chambers, and 2 lower ventricles, the discharging chambers. The atria open into the ventricles via the atrioventricular valves present in the atrioventricular septum. The ventricles are separated from each other by the interventricular septum. The cardiac skeleton is made of dense connective tissue and this gives structure to the heart. It forms the atrioventricular septum, which separates the atria from the ventricles, and the fibrous rings which serve as bases for the 4 heart valves. The cardiac skeleton also provides an important boundary in the heart's electrical conduction system, since collagen cannot conduct electricity. The interatrial septum separates the atria and the interventricular septum separates the ventricles. The interventricular septum is much thicker than the interatrial septum, since the ventricles need to generate greater pressure when they are contracting. Valves. The heart has 4 valves which separate its chambers. The valves ensure blood flows in the correct direction through the heart and prevents backflow. Between the right atrium and the right ventricle is the tricuspid valve. This consists of 3 cusps, that is, flaps or leaflets made of endocardium reinforced with additional connective tissue. Each of the 3 valve or cusps is attached to several strands of connective tissue called the chordae tendineae. They are composed of approximately 80% collagenous fibers, with the remainder consisting of elastic fibers and endothelium. They connect each of the cusps to a papillary muscle that extends from the walls of the ventricle. These muscles prevent the valve from falling back into the atrium. 3 papillary muscles to the right ventricle are called anterior posterior and septal muscles, which corresponds to the 3 positions of the valve cusps. Between the left atrium and left ventricle is the mitral valve, also known as the bicuspid valve, due to its having 2 cusps, an anterior and a posterior cusp. These cusps are also attached via chordae tendineae to 2 papillary muscles projecting from the ventricular wall. The tricuspid and the mitral valves are the atrioventricular valves. During the relaxation phase of the cardiac cycle, the papillary muscles are also relaxed and the tension on the chordae tendineae is slight. However, as the ventricle contracts, the papillary muscles also contracts. This creates tension on the chordae tendineae, helping to hold the cusps of the atrioventricular valves in place and preventing them from being blown back into the atria. The semilunar pulmonary valve is located at the base of the pulmonary artery. This has 3 cusps which are not attached to any papillary muscle. When the ventricles relaxes, blood flows back into the ventricle from the artery, and this flow of blood fills the pocket-like valve, pressing against the cusps which close to seal the valve. The semilunar aortic valve is at the base of the aorta and is not attached to papillary muscles. This too has 3 cusps which close with the pressure of the blood flowing back from the aorta. Right heart. The 2 major systemic veins, the superior and inferior vena cava, and the sinus which drains the myocardium, empty blood into the right atrium. The superior vena cava drains blood from above the diaphragm, while the inferior vena cava drains the blood from below the diaphragm. Immediately above and to the middle of the opening of the inferior vena cava is the opening of the thin-walled coronary sinus carrying blood from the heart. In the wall of the right atrium is an oval-shaped depression known as the fossa ovalis, which is a remnant of an opening in the fetal heart known as foramen ovale. The foramen ovale allowed blood in the fetal heart to pass directly from the right atrium to the left atrium, allowing some blood to bypass the pulmonary circuit. Most of the internal surface of the right atrium is smooth, and the interior surface has prominent ridges of pectinate muscles. The atria receive venous blood on a nearly continuous basis, preventing venous flow from stopping while the ventricles are contracting. While most ventricular filling occurs, the atria remain relaxed. The right atrium is connected to the right ventricle by the tricuspid valve. The walls of the right ventricle are lined with muscular ridges called trabeculae carneae, covered by endocardium. In addition to these, a band of cardiac muscles known as the moderator band is also present, arising from the lower part of the intraventricular septum and crossing the interior space of the right ventricle to connect with the inferior papillary muscle. These reinforce the thin walls of the right ventricle and play a crucial role in cardiac conduction. Left heart. After gas exchange in the pulmonary capillaries, blood high in oxygen returns to the left atrium via one of the 4 pulmonary veins. Only the left atrial appendage contains pectinate muscles. Blood flows nearly continuously from the pulmonary veins back into the atrium, which acts as a receiving chamber. From here, blood passes through an opening into the left ventricle through the bicuspid valve. Most blood flows passively into the heart while both the atria and ventricles are relaxed. But toward the end of the ventricular relaxation period, the left atrium will contract, pumping blood into the ventricle. This atrial contraction accounts for approximately 20% of ventricular filling. The walls of the left ventricle are lined with muscular ridges called trabeculae carneae, covered by endocardium and moderator bands. Although both sides of the heart will pump the same amount of blood, the muscular layer is much thicker in the left ventricle compared to the right, due to the greater force needed here. The left ventricle is the major pumping chamber for the systemic circuit. It ejects blood into the aorta through the aortic semilunar valve. Blood vessels. The blood from the heart is carried through the body by a complex network of blood vessels. These include the arteries, veins, and capillaries. Arteries. Arteries carry blood away from the heart to the different parts of the body. The main artery is the aorta that branches into other major arteries, which supply blood to different limbs and organs. These major arteries include the carotid artery, which carry blood to the brain, the brachial arteries, which carry blood to the arms, and the thoracic artery, which carry blood to the thorax and then into the hepatic, renal, and gastric arteries for the liver, kidney, and stomach respectively. The iliac artery carry blood to the lower limbs. The major arteries diverge into minor arteries and then into smaller vessels called arterioles to reach more deeply into the muscles and organs of the body. There are two types of arteries in the body, pulmonary and systemic. The pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs for purification, while the systemic arteries form a network of arteries and carry oxygenated blood from the heart to the other parts of the body. Arterioles and capillaries are further extensions of the main artery that help transport blood to reach tinier parts of the body. The arterioles have narrower lumen than the arteries. Veins. Veins carry blood to the heart. Fluid is also brought back to the heart via the lymphatic system. The veins are thinner walled and the pressure and rate of flow of blood are much lower. In addition, veins are structurally different from arteries. They have valves to prevent the backflow of blood. The veins have to work against the gravity to get back blood to the heart. Contraction of the skeletal muscles assists with the flow of blood back to the heart. Veins can be classified as pulmonary veins and systemic veins. The pulmonary veins are a set of veins that deliver oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart, and the systemic veins drain the tissues of the body and deliver deoxygenated blood to the heart. Pulmonary and systemic veins can either be superficial or embedded deep inside the body. All the capillaries connect to form venules, which are minor veins having narrow lumen than veins. These then connect to major veins and take blood high in the carbon dioxide back to the heart. The major veins drain blood from the same organs and limbs that the major arteries supply. Capillaries. Arterioles diverge into capillary beds which contain a large number, about 10 to 100 of capillaries that branch among the cells and tissues of the body. Capillaries have narrow diameter tubes that can fit red blood cells in single file lines and are the sites for the exchange of nutrients, waste and oxygen with tissues at the cellular level. Fluid also crosses into the interstitial space from the capillaries. The capillaries converge again into venules. Structure of blood vessels. The structure of different types of blood vessels reflects their function or layers. There are three distinct layers or tunics that form the walls of blood vessels. The inner layer is called tunica intima, which is a smooth inner lining of endothelial cells that are in contact with the blood cells. This tunic is continuous with the endocardium of the heart. Two further tunics that surround the endothelium are the middle, called tunica media, which is composed of smooth muscles, while the outer, known as tunica externa, which is a connective tissue containing collagen and elastic fibers. The elastic connective tissue stretches and supports the blood vessels, while the smooth muscle layer helps to regulate blood flow by altering vascular resistance through vasoconstriction and vasodilation. The arteries have thicker smooth muscle and connective tissue than the veins to accommodate the higher pressure and speed of freshly pumped blood. Unlike veins and arteries, capillaries have only one tunic. This single layer of cells is the location of diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the endothelial cells and red blood cells. It is also the exchange site via endocytosis and exocytosis. The movement of materials at the site of capillaries is regulated by vasoconstriction and vasodilation. This is important in the overall regulation of blood pressure. Coronary circulation. The coronary circulation supply oxygen, nutrients to cardiomyocytes by coronary arteries and the coronary veins to remove the deoxygenated blood and metabolic waste from it. There is a left and a right coronary artery supplying the left and the right hearts respectively. The great cardiac vein receives the major branches of the posterior, middle and small cardiac veins and drains into the coronary sinus, a large vein that empties into the right atrium. The anterior cardiac veins drain the front of the right ventricle and drain directly into the right atrium. The coronary arteries run along the surface of the heart and provide oxygen-rich blood to the heart muscles. A web of nerve tissue also runs through the heart, conducting the complex signals that govern contraction and relaxation. Heart conditions. Coronary artery disease. Over the years, cholesterol plaques can narrow the arteries supplying blood to the heart. The narrowed arteries are at a higher risk for complete blockage from a sudden blood clot. This blockage is called a heart attack. Stable angina pectoris. Narrowed coronary arteries cause predictable chest pain or discomfort with exertion. The blockages prevent the heart from receiving the extra oxygen needed for strenuous activity. Symptoms typically get better with rest. Unstable angina pectoris. When there is chest pain or discomfort that is new, worsening or occurs at rest. This is an emergency situation as it can precede a heart attack, serious abnormal heart rhythm or cardiac arrest. Myocardial infarction. In this case, a coronary artery gets suddenly blocked, leading to starvation of oxygen in parts of the heart muscles, which then gradually starts dying. Arrhythmia. It is an abnormal heart rhythm due to changes in the conduction of electrical impulses through the heart. Some arrhythmias are benign, but others are life-threatening. Congestive heart failure. In this condition, the heart is either too weak or too stiff to effectively pump blood through the body. Shortness of breath and leg swelling are common symptoms. Cardiomyopathy. It is a disease of heart muscle in which the heart is abnormally enlarged, thickened and or stiffened. As a result, the heart's ability to pump blood is weakened. Myocarditis. It is an inflammation of the heart muscle, most often due to a viral infection. Pericarditis. The inflammation of the pericardium is also called pericarditis. Viral infections, kidney failure and autoimmune conditions are common causes. Heart valve disease. There are 4 heart valves and each can develop problems. If severe, valve disease can cause congestive heart failure. Heart murmur. An abnormal sound heard when listening to the heart with a stethoscope. Some heart murmurs are benign, others suggest heart disease. Endocarditis. Inflammation of the inner lining or heart valves of the heart. Usually, endocarditis is due to a serious infection of the heart valves. Cardiac arrest. Sudden loss of heart function. Conclusion. The heart is present in the thoracic cavity between the two lungs. It is covered by the pericardium and consists of 4 chambers having 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. The 2 auricles are separated by the interauricular septum and the 2 ventricles are separated by the interventricular septum. Valves are present in every junction of chambers and in between blood vessels and heart chambers, regulating the unidirectional flow of blood. Arteries and veins help in circulating the blood all over the body and comprise the circulatory system along with heart. Arteries divide into arterioles and finally into capillaries, which penetrate the tissues. These then unite after leaving the tissue into venules and finally unite into veins. The veins transport blood to the heart and carry deoxygenated blood except for the pulmonary and portal veins. Arteries transport oxygenated blood away from the heart except for the pulmonary artery.